Well, good Tuesday morning, everyone. Glad you tuned back in. We are in the Christmas season, and we are reading a Christmas Bible reading plan called The Celebration of Jesus. And these passages that we're going to read all month are a summary of all the events that took place around surrounding the birth of Jesus Christ in Bethlehem. It's kind of like a Advent, but it's verses and passages picked out by gotquestions.org and BibleRef.com. You can go on gotquestions.org and type in Christmas Bible Reading Plan, and you can follow right along. I encourage you to do so. This is December 3rd. But we come to a verse today that, friends, you need. I know you know it already, but you need to remember where it is. And it's in Isaiah chapter 7 at verse 14. Does that ring the bell? Is this to me, it's so amazing that there's been a lot of debate over it through the years. I sat when I learned Hebrew. Our Hebrew class spent I don't know, an extended period of time. I can't remember if that's 2 or 3 days or a week on this verse alone. Just becoming convinced, which I was, that it says in Hebrew what it says in English. Isaiah chapter 7, there's such great verses in Isaiah, but it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal what this verse says. May I read it to you? It says, therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Now, this in the immediate context, it was to King Ahaz, whether he could win in victory in battle. But here was the sign that God gave. And it's so prophetic in nature. But he says, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call his name Emmanuel. Isn't that something? That the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and you'll call him Emmanuel. Now, I know you know about that verse because it's quoted again in the book of Matthew. And it was given to Joseph because Joseph was naturally upset that his fiancée, Mary, was pregnant. And God, in his grace, remember what he did? He sent an angel to Joseph, and it changed his perspective. The angel told Joseph to go ahead with the marriage because the baby that would be born to Mary and then to him was not the result of adultery. Indeed, Mary was still a virgin and was pregnant by the Holy Spirit, and that they would call him Jesus. He would save their people from their sins. All of that was just given in Matthew 1:20 to 21. But our verse is actually in verse 23. And here's what that verse says. Matthew 1 at verse 23. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. Isn't that something? Quoting Isaiah chapter 7 at verse 14. Now, why is that important? Well, Joseph, that was so wonderful for Joseph because indeed that angel tied what was happening to him through and Mary to what the prophet Isaiah had said to King Ahaz. Wow. That she could have a miraculous pregnancy, and indeed it is and was the fulfillment of prophecy. Man, I wonder how Joseph felt, don't you? The son that Mary would have was indeed the promised Messiah that Israel had been waiting for all those years. This is a miraculous verse. And it's important that we know it if we're going to understand Christmas when it comes later this month. This Mary was having a baby that God the Holy Spirit was the father of. They would call him Emmanuel. In Matthew chapter 1, in verse 23, every translation that I looked up translates that Hebrew word, and it said, God with us. God with us. Wow. No more doubt who this baby was going to be, is there? And Joseph and Mary now had this insight that the angel gave to them, that their son would be God in human form in the flesh, God with us. We should have no doubt then, indeed, that Jesus was God. You know, that's one of the things that people will argue about or talk about. Jesus was a good teacher. Uh-huh. Yeah. No. No, he wasn't. Because from the beginning, Jesus claimed to be God come in the flesh. And so anything else he said has to be studied in light of that. Because if Jesus was lying, then how could whatever he says be trusted? He claimed to be God. You who have seen me have seen the Father. No, indeed, he was born of a virgin, just like Isaiah promised. The angel made it clear to Joseph, Emmanuel. His name will be called Emmanuel. God with us. No more questioning, no more doubt. And so when we get to seeing the manger scene, we've got to remember Isaiah 7:14, don't we? Again, written hundreds of years prior to the birth of Jesus. But behold, a virgin will give birth, conceive, and bear a son, and they'll call his name Emmanuel, which Matthew translates for us, God with us. How does that make you feel? Does that put you in awe of God's plan? That how did he even think of that? But it was important because that's the only way this baby, because the sin was passed down through the father, this baby could be sinless. And he was sinless then and his whole life. Why? Emmanuel, God with us. Wow. Hey, we'll see you again tomorrow for another amazing verse.